Night on the Flat Out Racing Network. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Matthew Rodriguez. And Matt, new car for these drivers. We've never seen this before here on FRN with the IR01 cars. And we were talking before we came on the air. This is a unique monster that these drivers are going to be piloting around this 2 mile speedway.
Yeah, and looking at what we previously had, seeing a 3-liter V10 monster that can get up to speeds about 260 miles an hour on these straights, it is absolutely insane. And unfortunately, that's going to make a lot of the maybe a small touches just a little bit bigger.
Let's talk about some of the things these drivers are going to have to deal with during the course of this race. Of course, only one faster pair. We're going to be talking about faster pairs a lot this season. I think if practice is anything to go by, the hits these drivers take. I mean, the car just kind of folds up and disintegrates. So you're going to want to keep that thing in one piece for the closing stages of this event. But another thing too that might mix things up. Not your typical IndyCar type restarts, your open wheel type starts with single file. It's double file restarts here. And here at Michigan, there might be that anxiousness to maybe take it 3, maybe even 4 wide down to turn 1.
I'm seeing the even bigger step of, hey, if we get a late race caution, it's coming down to it. Hey, starting double file, whatever lane that you're in, this may be the lane that takes you to victory.
All right, so season opener, everybody starts at 0 points. Do you kind of go into this type of a race with a devil may care, or are you kind of laying back and testing the waters, seeing what this car will do, what the competition will do in preparation for the upcoming weeks?
Normally I'm in the, hey, it's the first race of the season. If we're going to make a splash, let's make one. I'm a little bit more in the conservative category since this car has underwent a lot of changes for the upcoming season. And I'm not totally sure. And I know there's some guys in here that maybe are not that familiar, not that confident with this car as they were the DW12. So I would be a little bit concerned going forward. But hey, uh, you're going to do you.
I want to touch on that a little bit too, because we obviously had the privilege of broadcasting several seasons of the Dark Horse Racing Series in the past. We see a lot of familiar names in the field here tonight for this event, but there's other names that have entered into this organization, into their respective series, that we're not all that familiar with. So this kind of melting pot, maybe potential of experience versus a little bit lack thereof, that's going to make things interesting in the early going.
And one name that kind of jumps out at me that has my attention, but I'm not exactly sure what his level is Roberts, where I'm used to him being in some of these open wheel cars, and he has quite a fondness for some of the older open wheelers. But I don't know how much that's going to translate over to the IRO1, since really the IRO1 is the poster child of, hey man, I just don't want to let go of the 90s. I just
Currently
don't want to let go of the 90s, and I think we can still make it in this era.
Yeah, we're currently in the process of completing up qualifying, and as of right now, we've kind of got a mixture of the drivers that we're familiar with versus the drivers that we're not all that familiar with. Currently situated on the front row, still a couple of seconds left on the board for someone to maybe try and knock their way up onto the front row of this race. But let's talk about something else that you were touching on before we came on for the broadcast, and that's this pit road. How fast these drivers are going coming out of turn 4. They're going to have to get that thing woed up pretty quickly to be able to make pit road speed if we end up having green flag pit stops.
And that's the really concern that I have in my head, where these cars have a lot more really downforce and mechanical grip than the old DW12s. But I'm a little bit concerned of, hey, that maybe will make you a little bit overconfident. And these tires do lock up easily. These cars do lock up easily, and that can easily send you straight into the inside wall, or hey, you're in the infield and caution's out.
Qualifying is complete. It's J.W. Miller in the number 22 that's going to be the one to lead us to green. And remember I mentioned we had those couple of seconds left on the board for someone to jump up there onto the front row. Craig Forsyth did just that. It was going to be Charles Teed who was going to start on the outside of the front row, but driver 27 nabbing the second position in the latter stages. Charles Teed, Jeff Heisong going to make up row number 2 with Eric Peterson. He will complete the top 5 as we take you through the starting lineup for this race. 26 drivers here tonight. This is going to be a lot of fun to see because we saw them in practice. They were double wide, they were 3 wide, they were 4 wide, and This is a very spacious racetrack. I mean, you can see with some of these pan shots, there's 5 grooves that are available in the corners here, separated by those seams, and I kind of get the feeling that drivers are going to be utilizing every single one of them. Now, if we go back to the DW12 cars back in the previous seasons of the Dark Horse Racing Series, we saw, especially at tracks like this, in the closing stages, the goal was clear. You just, when you were the leader, you hugged that yellow line, forced other drivers to go around the long way to be able to pass you, and more often than not, you could hold your ground. You were documenting the runs drivers are able to get here in these cars. Does that bring the second, possibly third groove into play and have drivers in the closing stages have to adjust their defensive plan?
And the bigger thing in my mind is this has been Michigan, and Michigan has been really known to have these wacky pit strategies or, hey, I'm running out of fuel on my last lap. Here, it's a completely different ballgame since we're not exactly sure how these cars are going to act. And we don't know if the draft is really going to save that much more fuel because they're running about 20 miles an hour quicker than out of draft. It's insane, to put lightly.
We showed you on your starting lineup the 17 drivers that took time. Those are the only ones that show up on the grid. The rest of the drivers that did not take time line up as follows. Joseph Morales will roll off 18th. DL Lemon and Brad Yonkman, they're going to be in row number 10. Charles Johnson, Jim Brooks in row 11, Jeremy Reed, Nicholas Winook in row 12, and Caden Norfree and Sheridan Wade. They will complete the rest of the field. Looks like maybe the 6 of Charles Johnson, or I'm sorry, correction, the 8 of Charles Johnson may have missed the grid, maybe starting from pit road. We'll keep you updated on that, see if he is going to be at least taking the green flag here tonight. So 100 laps, 200 miles here this evening. Drivers are going to have to pace themselves, but there's always that a little rush of adrenaline at the beginning of each race, especially when it's the first race of the season. We'll see if these drivers can rein those horses back, rein those dark horses back there. There's a pun for you. And see if they can get themselves in a bit of an orderly fashion here in preparation for what's going to be a bit of an endurance race here tonight at Michigan International. That iRacing pace car going to dive onto pit road, and we're moments away from getting this Fart NDCar series underway.
Definitely never going to be a dull moment with that name.
Never is. In case you're wondering, folks, this is the Michigan Pass Gas 200. They have embraced the acronym here in this series.
It's going to be a blast.
Yes, it is. Was that a pun? I hope not. Green flag in the flagman's hand, and here we go at Michigan.
And already we're pushing it 3 wide. See Jeff Heisong on the outside. If you want an odd fact here, Jeff Heisong was the highest finisher of last year's race, who is actually still running in the series, or at least running at this race in the series. So I'm looking for Heisong to really make a move tonight. We saw him last season really start to make that big jump.
Big run there going into 3. He's trying to get to the right rear quarter panel of Charles T. That's the black, white, and pink car in second place. Is J.W. Miller going to lead the first lap, but only by half a car because we're still 3. Now Heisong up the middle. Teed high, wide, and handsome into 1.
I'm looking back in the pack. Looks like Gary Corley may have had some issues here on the initial racetrack. Looks like he may have got a little bit of a tag in the back from Caden Norfree. Not exactly sure what happened there.
Is currently on pit road, is the 7th. That is obviously an unscheduled pit stop. We'll double check and see if he may have to use his fast repair right out of the gate. I mean, it's open wheel cars, regardless of whether we're talking Formula 1 or IndyCar. They are very sensitive to even the slightest amount of damage.
And that's the big thing where, as intense as we're racing right now, I'm really worried if just get a little bit of just damage. I'm really worried that's going to take out half the field.
There's Jeff Heisong, side by side, can't get away from each other here to the line. Boy, that was close for that lap lead. I think it might have been Heisong with that run off of 4 and on the top side of the front straightaway. Look who joined the party. The yellow car on the outside line, that's Eric Peterson in the 36.
And I really hope this season's just a really good change of pace for Eric.
No, please don't commentator curse him. Please don't.
I mean, last season it was what's going to go wrong next. I mean, it's either, hey, it's a black flag at the beginning of the race, or, hey, on the first restart, he ends up spinning out into the infield. I mean, man's had every bit of bad luck I can ask. I'm just kind of curious. Is this really going to be the season where it turns around, or is it going to be a what's next?
On board with Eric Peterson, running right in the tire tracks there through 1 and 2 of Jeff Highsong. The run he's able to get here down the back straightaway, picking up that slipstream off of the 18, and then moves up there to the 4th groove, kind of straddling that seam. How much of the seam's going to come into play? Because we know when it's stock cars, they straddle the seams. They don't want to get their tires on those seams when the sun's been beaten down. It's rather slick. Is it the same deal here with the open wheel cars?
And, I wish I could tell you. I mean, my logic says that, hey, they need to really kind of pick their seams. They want to try and conserve tire wear, but realistically, I don't know a lot about these tires. I know some about how these cars act at road courses, but realistically, running these cars at an oval track maybe half a year ago would have been unheard of.
Brandon Gates, Eric Schaus now break up into the podium. Schaus on the top side there in the white machine. The red and white car second on that inside line is the 76 of Brandon Gates, trying to get around. Whoa, Gates! Got his left sides down below that white line, but we need to remember, this is not a super speedway like Talladega or Daytona. The white line is a guideline of the separation of the apron and the racetrack, but it is not out of bounds, so you may see drivers try and get a run down there.
I don't think anyone's going to be that brave to jump down there just because that corner comes so quickly.
It's a possibility, though.
Maybe if I get desperate,
they will race there.
I don't know. Maybe if I get desperate, I'll try and send it down there. But it seems like a bad move. But just looking at some of the runs, some of these guys are able to get in the high line. Goodness.
What's scaring me a little bit is the runs on that inside line, because it's kind of reminding me of a super speedway race where that inside line is the faster way around, but it's the more congested. And you can end up having drivers stacking up there and checking up on that inside line. And if that 3rd, 4th car in line doesn't get the memo, we could end up seeing some disastrous results.
Luis Gonzalez-Nunez definitely is one guy who has my attention. He has never been afraid of sending it. We've learned that. He's never been afraid of sending it. But what I think he's doing right now is he's just trying to test how quickly he can kind of come from back in the pack and use that draft and see how good of a run he could get as a single car. And that's kind of super speedway mentality here, where you're just looking at this, you're testing stuff out for later in the race if it comes to. I really wonder if he's just kind of testing the waters, seeing if it's possible.
We talked about how spacious Michigan is, the ability to get runs. You want a little statistic here, 10 laps in, and your podium drivers, none of them started inside the top 10 here tonight.
And I'm just seeing these guys go 3 wide. I can tell you can easily kind of look throughout the field and see who's a little bit more hesitant about going 3 wide, who's extremely comfortable with pushing it.
So it appears that the 11 of Caden Norfray mentioned that he got together with Gary Corley in the early going. He has called it an early evening. He'll get credit with 25th. Corley returned to the track after the unscheduled pit stop. He is 1 lap down, and some early issues as well, apparently for the 63 of A.J. Hobson. He's still running, still on the lead lap, but he's upwards of 25 seconds behind the race leader, so not certain what happened to him in the early going.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what happened. I watched his replay. He kind of just pulled down to the bottom of the track and let everyone pass him, but he lost the draft on top of it. I wonder if it may have been just, hey, he was trying to drop back to the back of the field so he could just ride around, but just really missed.
Oh, Charles Teed, what's happened with the 5? I just noticed him on my relative dropping quickly through the running order.
And it was the same thing. He pulled all the way down, but I think these guys are kind of missing that super speedway mentality where you wait way too long and you're ending up losing that draft, and unfortunately these cars are just going way too fast for a single car to be competitive.
So Teed drops all the way back to, looks like around the 20th position. Another car bailing out of line there.
Looks like Eric Schaus. Schaus is also dropping down. I know both him and Teed are on the same team, so I'm wondering if that's kind of a strategy here where he may be dropping back, trying to pick Teed up.
Just continuing to free fall back a little bit, although he...
Oh! Man, I saw Luis Gonzalez-Nunez almost get sent by the 59 card.
Schaus has dropped back to 12th. He's currently holding 12th, 13th place, so he hasn't fallen all the way back.
I'm just looking at the dicey moves up here. We're 14 laps into this. I mean, we were watching practice, and sometimes we didn't get past about 10 laps without some conflict. Obviously, practice is practice, but when going into race, I mean, it just takes extreme mental stamina. Some people just don't understand that, hey, yes, driving around in circles, it comes with its own challenges, but it's also staying focused and knowing what the car will do as the tires degrade, or as, hey, someone pulls in front of you, takes the air off your nose, your car can change so dramatically.
And I remember with the DW12 cars at the 2-mile racetracks, we were given the fuel window of roughly in the region of 25 to 30 laps, so one would wonder if we're currently halfway through a fuel run for these guys.
And that's a big question. I mean, obviously, the big old V10 is not as fuel efficient as the old DW12, but it stands to reason that maybe bigger fuel tanks, just a little bit of draft, that could change a lot of fuel numbers here. And again, Michigan's always been really a high fuel mileage race, golf course racing.
On board with the 15, and you see them 3 wide stacked up ahead of him. That is Chris Stouffer, and you want to know what goes on in a broadcaster's head while getting prepared? I don't realize if he took his first name, his last name, just said it real quick, it's Christopher. So, there's that. It's good to be back doing iRacing broadcast.
Don't you love it?
Just love it. We'll be back with this series too. It's been a while since we've been with Dark Horse Racing series, and we know that they always bring about great program for us and exciting racing. And oh man, wow, it just got very exciting right there between Brandon Gates and Jeff Hisong.
Hisong's taking no prisoners this season.
Yeah,
he is.
Robert's racing, but not in open wheel cars.
Well, I mean, I think we've documented this over the season, but I mean, obviously we've seen some guys when we first started broadcasting Dark Horse till now where they've made that huge leap with, again, just driving talent, skill, and then also just confidence. And if I really had to pin that all on someone, Jeff Hisong's my guy that I pinned down there. I mean, seeing him when he first started to where he's become now, where around the end of last season, he was, out of the big 3 that were really fighting, he was the 4th. He was a guy who was always knocking on that door.
I would also throw Luis Gonzalez Nunez in there, not necessarily completely, because we know at the heavy braking zone tracks, like we saw him do well at New Hampshire, which we're going to next week, tracks like that. But it seemed like at the bigger racetracks, that's where his confidence level kind of kicked up. He seemed to kind of hang back and kind of wait and see what happens. When we got close to the end of the season, he got that confidence to get up there and race in the front.
I think the big thing with Luis really is, again, he's not afraid to send it in the corners, but the big issue really stems from, I think he's a little too willing to send it.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that seems to be a lot more of a problem at the smaller tracks. If we bring up Gateway as an example, where, that kind of small margin for error doesn't bode well with his style. But I'm saying that his style definitely makes him a cut above the rest of the field, by far.
Brandon Gates, ever since he got to the front, he's been able to keep everyone else at bay. He's been challenged double wide, 3 wide a couple of times, but he's stayed true to that inside line, and I believe so far he has led the most laps. But how about Chris Stouffer jumping up there to the top side as well in the 15? Now, something else that you touched on was these cars tend to have that little bit of push as you get longer into a run, and I'm wondering if maybe that's why the inside line is able to hold court, at least for the moment, for driver 76, because that outside line, while it's able to get that good entry into the corner, it does have that push up off exit, strips off maybe a mile or 2 per hour off with the straightaway speed. I'm
a little iffy if that's the full reason. I'm wondering if it's a bit everyone's trying to save fuel and it's, hey, I don't want to do it.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good point.
Now, obviously, everyone has their own tactics, but I really wonder if that's kind of the maybe some of the thought process back in the field. Man, that inside line's getting some yeah, I almost saw Nicholas Vanook almost drive into. That's a really cool car. Sheridan Reddy.
And at the very familiar colors, the light blue and white, number 27, Craig Forsyth, former champion of the Dark Horse Racing Series, and doing pretty good here tonight, currently in the 9th position. We've yet to see him crack up into the top 5, but that just, I don't know, that seems to be the Craig Forsyth way. He doesn't necessarily get up there at the front until the very end, so just Craig Forsyth right now.
The thing that kind of comes into mind is Forsyth's not always the guy who will beat you on speed, but he'll try to beat you with his mind first, where he will think through things. And again, if he can make a strategy work, he's got the speed to kind of pull it off, where it's that perfect combination of maybe he's not the fastest to roll on every racetrack, but he's definitely one of the smartest people to roll into a racetrack.
Seen a number of drivers, unfamiliar names to us, up here towards the front. Brandon Gates leading the way. Christopher hounding him down. Bill Hales was up here. How about the 59 of Najee Camargo? I apologize if I'm saying the first name incorrectly, but right now he's in the 5th position, trying to challenge there on the inside line against Luis Gonzalez Nunez.
Man, I see Luis getting so loose on that high side. I just can't tell if it's because of the draft or it's because the tires wearing.
Nunez up there on that outside line, trying to get some clean air to the nose, running in the wake of 15 of Christopher. Again, we don't know the fuel window, but I'd say we're not that far away from when these drivers going to have to think about coming to pit road. Maybe in the next 4, 5, 6 laps or so, potentially.
Yeah, and I'm noticing a lot more drivers seem to be a little bit iffier on car control at the moment. I'm noticing it seems like less confidence than there was at the beginning of the race. And obviously with tires that will do it for you, but it's looking sketchy. If it makes much sense, where I can tell that some drivers seem a little bit spooked about the class.
Gotta wonder if maybe our weather conditions play a little part into that. You see 72 degrees outside, but the track temp 93, starting to slowly climb up towards the triple digits.
And the most important thing is 0% humidity. These cars are
That's
full
right.
bore.
Oh boy. Boy, Luis Gonzalez Nunez almost was on a first name basis with the outside wall up at turn 4. He was that high up the racetrack.
He's making it work for him, though. I said, I don't question the man's methods. It's all about
contact! Christopher! Brandon Gates got together. Christopher is up in the outside wall. No caution, as I think he stopped on the track, and now the caution is going to fly.
Yeah. And realistically, some may criticize that he didn't just kind of Alt F4 or maybe just kind of tried rolling forward, but realistically, look at that right front tire. I mean, it is off, and I can speak from personal experience. If I'm kind of worried about my tire or kind of worried about the steering of my car, look at him. He's going to go straight into this corner. And this is the big reason why I say, like, I would not want to pull down the track in front of other cars when I'm missing a wheel, just because I'm not confident on what my car is going to do. So I completely understand of him just parking it against the wall and just saying, hey, look, I'm going to park here and wait for a clear moment, then I'll go down.
Christopher was battling for the lead at the time. We'll take you back here to turn 1. And I want to go all the way back to the entry to turn 1 because I'm sorry, this is actually turn 3. My apologies. I want you to watch the car on the inside line. That is the race leader, Brandon Gates. And I believe he gets his left sides on that apron. And that's what sends him up just the least little bit into the lane that Christopher was running in. Oh, no, actually, I went back a little too far on the replay. It was turn 1. I was right originally.
I'm just looking at it here. It just looks like a little bit of push. Just a little bit of push off that bottom lane. And that was just enough. And it really wasn't huge contact. But you got to look at the fact they're going about 240. And I'm looking at both Christopher, and I'm seeing him here. He went from about 243 to about 238 with that little bit of hit. And it just took enough grip away from that front tire to send him straight into the fence. And I think it may be just a combination of, hey, we're not diving as low as we possibly can, but it also was the fact that these tires are losing grip.
Very fortunate the impact was basically the right side parallel with the outside safer barrier. Any other type of angle, it might have shot him back down into traffic. And again, he was at the very front of the field. So the fact that we got away with just a single car incident, pretty lucky in that respect.
And I'm looking at, man, this is one moment where I really hope that no one in the field is running direct drive wheels, because that hit hurts. That hit really hurts.
So no doubt Christopher will have to be utilizing his faster pair, not even halfway through this race, so might not be able to be quite as aggressive in the remaining portions of this race until the very end as he was in the early going. A couple of drivers elected to stay out. Let's see if they're going to come to pit road this time. That was Matt Wagner that you're looking at, your current leader in the 3, and William Swenson in the 87. Out again. Interesting.
Hmm.
I wonder if maybe they're waiting until 1 to green to come to pit road. I mean, this will
I
definitely
doubt
give
it.
us an idea of how far they can go with the fuel window, but the thing I'm the most worried about, not the fuel, but the tires. They're going to have about 30 some odd laps on their tires, as opposed to Jeff Hysong, Brandon Gates, Eric Peterson, the completion of the top 5.
I know Wagner, and I'd like to believe he has a plan. It's just, how viable is that plan? That's gonna be the big question.
Well, the other big question is, how will these double file restarts play out? There you see the 87 jump to the top of the 3. Might have been waiting for communication from Wagner as to which lane he wanted to restart in. I don't know if the leader gets lane choice here or not. Everybody else doubled up behind. We're going to have, it looks like, 22 drivers on the lead lap here when we go back green. Gary Corley still 1 lap down, and Christopher returns to the track, but 2 laps down after he had to call that tow to pit lane. Well, let's see what old tires can do here for Matt Wagner.
And the really big thing I really kind of come to it here is, I think that a lot of drivers are going to be a little bit more careful with their cars, because that wreck really showed the, hey, if your car gets damaged, I don't think you're making it back with these.
That's a very good observation. Yeah, we saw in practice where the cars, the tires, they would still remain tethered to the race car, but as we saw there with Christopher, he lost that right front and just could not turn the vehicle. So we'll see what happens here as they got stacked up. The 87's dropping back very quickly. Ended up a couple drivers on the extreme outside line. Meanwhile, Matt Wagner, for the moment, going to keep Jeff Hysong in the rearview mirror, but here comes Hysong to the top, going into 3.
And they all look, Wagner looked planted enough. Keyword enough. I think it's going to take a few more laps before we finally start seeing the full effects of how that tire wear is really going to hit them.
Really broke up the field there with drivers. Whoa! Did Nunez get the wall? I think he did.
Currently, he's off the fence.
Yep, dropping back as the 14. Never wrecked it, but he was riding the wall for quite a good portion of 1 and 2. Got another car on the apron just up ahead of him. That's Matt Wagner in the 3. I think he's coming to pit road.
And just looking at Wagner, I was taking a look, and it really did not seem like Luis really damaged the car. It looks like he just set it against the fence. May have just gotten a little bit overconfident with how the car had been handling, just sent it a little bit deeper. But no, Wagner really just pulled off, so I wonder if he did run out of fuel.
Yeah, it's so weird, right? Was he banking on maybe a quick yellow coming out in that restart to save him? I don't know, but this is going to put him at least 1 lap down and maybe 2, depending on how quickly these drivers make it back around, because he is going to have to take on a full fuel load, one would assume, as Eric Peterson and Bill Hales, they're duking it out for the top position. And I was going to mention before Luis Gonzalez Nunez got up into the wall, the 87 of Swenson, when he was up there, he kind of held up some drivers, so we only had a pack of 6. Look at how quickly the rest of the field reeled that front group back in. We've got about 20 cars up in the lead pack again.
And that's why I'm thinking, if we really get late into the race, I don't think I really want to be on those first 2 rows. I think I want to be about 5th, 6th on back, just because the amount of run I can get, I just get a little bit of an opening. I mean, I could take that run and just go.
Matt Wagner down pit road and made the left-hand turn to the garage area. So he'll finish 24th place here tonight, joining Caden Norfray. 23 drivers still running, and currently 20 of them on the lead lap. The 87 of Swenson actually, last time around, came down pit road and made a pit stop. So he has now fallen off the lead lap, so the strategy did not work out for him or Wagner there. Staying out under our only caution up to this point here this evening at Michigan.
And it's a tough break for Wagner. I mean, he's a guy that has a lot of talent, who knows how to run this place, and just kind of seeing him go out like that hits me a little bit weird. I feel there's a bigger story behind it, but like I said, I think that's more of the race 2 kind of answers.
Double wide all the way back through. We were looking 3 wide around the 5th position. That was where Jim Brooks, Craig Forsyth, and Sheridan Wade were mixing it up. Now it's going to be side by side for 3rd. Nope, for the race lead. Bill Hale's got a good run there down the back straightaway, and he's going to clear Eric Peterson and go to the point. Although it almost kind of looked like maybe right there, like you were saying, Peterson was out in front for a couple of laps and now decides, okay, I'm going to try and save a little bit of fuel. I don't want to be in that lead car.
And I'm just looking at Brandon Gates. I mean, I can tell he wants to get back up there, but the biggest thing is, I saw him. As I'm watching some of these guys,
wow.
And that's the thing, it gets so dicey, and it may not look that fast to some of our camera angles, but I promise you, it really is that fast. And in car, I mean, you make these split-second decisions, you make guesses off of where you think people are going to be, and unfortunately, it just kind of irks you a little bit when someone does the exact same thing that you're thinking about doing. It really bothers you. Man, he did the exact same move I wanted to do, now he's walking.
On board with now new race leader Brandon Gates, just showing you how quickly things take place here. Looking back at them, double wide, 3 wide. Look at the run there that Bill Hales gets. My goodness.
And just look at how deep. We're about 2 wide, about 3-4 cars deep. Heck, about 7 cars deep, honestly.
Pylon is going crazy with the side-by-sides here. Drivers advancing and losing positions here. All the way back inside of the top 20. The battle still for the race lead. Hales on the top, Gates on the bottom. Eric Peterson right now in the 3rd position. Jeff Hysong unofficially 4th. And how about Jim Brooks, high, wide, and handsome there in that number 51. He's now up inside of the top 5.
You want to know how crazy these cars are? Look who's in 10. Look who's in 9th, Luis Gonzalez Nunez. He was in the fence less than 15 laps ago. He is back in the lead pack. He is on his way to the front.
Okay, so
these
I regret
cars
everything
are
I said about the durability of these cars. These things are tanks.
They're honestly like the next things a little bit.
Yeah,
they're tanks until they're not.
250-mile-per-hour bricks.
But I mean, look at it. That he just barely set it against the fence. There's almost no damage on that thing. Maybe the toes knocked in a little bit. I don't know.
Think so. I don't think so.
It looks brand new.
It really does. And up inside of the top 10. How about that? Now battling side by side with Nicholas Winook on his inside, trying to get to A.J. Hobson in the 63. A.J. Hobson in that yellow Pentoil car, a Rick Mears throwback scheme there inside of the top 10. As the front battle is now for 2nd as Brandon Gates in control of the race leads. Got him stacked up behind him. Hysong and Bill Hales for 3rd. Sheridan Wade, Eric Peterson there for that 4th position. First time we've really mentioned Sheridan as Hysong. I'll tell you, it's that inside car that worries me in these side-by-side battles, because we saw it earlier with Brandon Gates when he had that little bit of a push-up into Chris Stouffer, and right there, Hysong almost pushed up into the 53 of Bill Hales.
Honestly, that's what's hitting me a little bit, where Peterson, every time I've seen him, it looks like he's driving defensively. Like he thinks the guy on the inside line is going to come up and hit him, and that kind of has me concerned a little bit, where confidence is almost everything in racing, besides skill, but confidence does matter for a good bit of it, where, hey, you may have the best car in the field, but if you're not confident it's going to stick in this corner, it doesn't matter how good your car is. And that's the big thing, where I'm just looking at it, he doesn't look confident.
I've said this many times, and I've actually had this from personal experience too. If you drive scared, you actually make more mistakes than if you don't drive scared. Wow. Is there contact there?
Yep. Sheridan Wade just barely popped the back of Brandon Gates' right rear and just sent him sideways. That was a great save from Gates. I can imagine he's too pleased about it, though, but...
Sheridan Wade goes right back to heavy side drafting off of turn 4. Hill Hale says, okay, you guys want to mix it up down there? I'm going to try that top line and take it 3 wide.
And here's when we start playing a little bit of the inspector role where we're going to start looking at that.
Oh, no!
Oh, that's the field. That's the field.
Upwards of 10 cars, maybe a full dozen. Oh, wow.
I'm not exactly
popped up in the air there after
I'm not exactly sure what happened between Wade and Gates there, but I feel that's a little bit unnecessary this early in the race.
Well, that has a lot of drivers now torn up. Trying to run down the list. Looks like Jeremy Reed, Nicholas Winook, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Najee Camargo, Eric Schaus, Bill Hales, DL Lemon. And I'm sure I haven't gotten the complete list here. And there's no tires left. That almost kind of looks like one of those, remember the Ski-Doos?
Honestly, the biggest question I have at this point is who can still move? Because obviously you need to get the pit road if you can, but I'm seeing a lot of guys just without tires.
Eric Peterson, Nicholas Winook might be the only two
Yeah, Luis
that are going to be able to make their way back. I think the rest that I listed off there were all drivers that had to take the teleport, the tow truck back to pit road. Let's go back to the back straightaway and see what happened here.
Yeah, I see Winook's still trying to get the pit road. Props for him, but that thing is crabbing badly.
Oh, 54 in the air that he got, and then I think maybe he slides back over one of his tires, and that's why he popped up in the air again there.
So maybe it's better to dissect this incident a little bit. Let's go back one lap. Let's go back and look at Wade and Gates the first time, because obviously there was an incident that predated this.
Looking at it right there, that contact in the right rear. Going
and I'm wondering
3.
What really kicked this huge wreck off, because it looked like two guys battling for it. And I'm really wondering if that little incident kind of just kicked this whole thing off. Where, hey, I mean, obviously he's still racing him hard. I think it may have just been, I don't want to give. You shouldn't be racing me like this early in the race. And I think it was just push came to shove, and unfortunately this met in the middle.
You know, when I look at it there, from the angle that we just had down the back straightaway, it almost looked like when the 54 of Sheridan Wade made the move, the back end stepped out him and directed him back down into the right rear of the 76. We'll get some more angles, but that's almost what it kind of looked like.
I'm a bit divided in this because I'm taking the overhead look here, and it looks kind of like they met in the middle. It looks like Gates was going for a defensive move. He was trying to block him off a little bit. And I'm looking at Wade, and it looks like he was just trying to get closer to Gates, trying to pin him down, and unfortunately just kind of met.
Just look at nowhere for these drivers to go. There's no reaction time.
I mean,
you can hit the brakes, but more than likely it's not going to do you a lick of good.
I mean, look at Eric Peterson's on board. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was just caught in the middle of it where, I mean, he was the first car that kind of got dealt that bad hand. And he had no reaction.
36.
Just running up the outside, trying to get the best run possible. Thinks about setting up for a move. Those two meet in the middle, and it's, uh-oh. And at that time, you're just along for the ride.
You can see right up ahead of him the debris littering the entirety of turn 3, the smoke, carnage there. Drivers trying to get their cars refired, but unable to do so.
My goodness.
Wow.
Like I said, that's a tough pill to swallow if you're some of these other guys who, hey, you were having a good run here at the end of this race. It's been really clean thus far. And I think it was really just fact of the matter is they were battling. And unfortunately, when you're battling, you're not really thinking about the end of the race. You're just trying to get past the other guy. And I think it was just caught up in the heat of the moment.
Trying to see if I can get an indication of all of who had to use their faster pair here. Current list that I've got, Jim Brooks in the S1R1 has actually already used his fast repair. I don't remember seeing him getting involved in an incident. Gary Corley had to use his fast repair when he had the unscheduled pit stop in the early going, but the drivers from this incident that had to use their fast repairs, we are back green, included Nicholas Winook, Eric
And here's
Schaus, Najee Camargo, Eric Peterson, Bill Hales, and Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Brandon Gates, D.L. Lemon, Sheridan Wade, and Jeremy Reed. All those drivers, they do not have their lifeline anymore.
And I think the bigger cost that we're really seeing here is that we only have 11 cars in the lead lap. A lot of guys had to tow out of that. A lot of guys had struggles even getting back to pit road, and they ended up losing a lap out of that. That was the huge hit for them, where they just were not expecting. These cars are somewhat tough, but when they break, and it's really tough for them to kind of get back going.
Making 10 drivers on the lead lap now. Saw the 93 there, Brad Youngman, coming to pit road just after we went green. He will undoubtedly lose at least a lap here with a green flag pit stop. As Jeff Hysong, AJ Hobson, and now Joseph Morales, the top three. So with the departure of a lot of our front runners in that wreck, now we're seeing a couple of drivers up here towards the front that have been kind of running mid-pack for the first half of this race. Also notice that Will Roberts has jumped up into the top 10 in 7th. Our pole sitter, J.W. Miller, now back up here in 8th. And Elmer Joseph in the 13 right now in 9th. Gary Corley, who had the early issues, right now he is the last car on the lead lap in the 10th position.
I'm seeing it getting kind of dicey up there. See Jim Brooks, he's making some moves, trying to dice through the field. As much as I want to say that was a big one. Oh, Jim Brooks!
Oh, wow!
Peterson's in the wall.
And
they're still wrecking out
caution.
that. Yeah, it looks like Will Roberts. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we weren't done. Brandon Gates
Bill
got
Hales.
involved in another one.
Yep, that's Hales there on the left side of your screen, focused right now on the 76 of Brandon Gates. Both were running off the lead lap.
And I think that really started out of 4. That's where it really kicked off, where it looked like Jim was just not at sync with his car. He just didn't have as much confidence with it as possible. It looks like he ended up bouncing off of Nicholas Renook on the bottom and just kind of was unable to get resettled back in there. And I'm not exactly sure what happened that caused him to kind of run in the back. Maybe he wasn't expecting a checkup.
Someone there looked like had a really good save. Might have been Charles Teed. What happened here? Yeah, who was that? Yeah, right. You're right. That was Winook actually that he ran into the backup. I thought that was Teed. And you see them wreck further back there with the 76, the 53.
Joseph Morales did a really good job he got hit in the back from Jim, but he kind of did a great job just saving the car, just making sure it kept straight. And the real big issue really began when after Jim hit Joseph, he went up and hit Eric. And when he hit Eric, that kind of caused a chain reaction out back where it looks like Will was a little bit iffy with how it was going on. He ended up getting in contact with, looks like Teed, possibly.
I think you're right. I think that was Teed. It was down on the
Sorry,
bottom.
that was Brandon Gates. Brandon Gates got a little bit of contact with the back of Teed, ended up going up the track, and I think it was just a little bit of an old friend gap whack that took out Will here, and he did a great job trying to miss it, but just unfortunately got involved.
And then the 76 of Brandon Gates, a little ramp there off of another car. I couldn't tell who that was.
My goodness.
Wow.
And just looking at some of these cars, they're something else. Without a better word, they're just something else.
Oh, we got a chance here. Under this, our third caution of the evening here at Michigan, in preparation for next week at New Hampshire. I want to give a shout out to a big sponsor of the series, and that is 4D Racewear, I'm sorry. They are actually going to be supplying the champion of the series with special race footwear. And also, they're having a raffle for drivers that race in, I believe it's 80% of the schedule. So big promotion going on there for 40 Raceware. Appreciate them and what they're doing here for this series. And these drivers not only getting a championship trophy, but something to race for in that regard as well, as we've crossed into the halfway threshold and are getting ready to double up for yet another restart. Elmer Joseph on pit road in the 13 car. On the lead lap, looks like Will Roberts got the free pass here under this caution. So 11 drivers will be back on the lead lap. 2 drivers added to the list of those that will not reach the conclusion of this race. Bill Hales in the 53 and Jeremy Reed in the 44. They'll get credited for 22nd and 23rd. They join Matt Wagner and Caden Norfray in the garage area. Eric Peterson still sits on pit road, 4 laps down, getting repairs done to his machine. Brad Youngman, after we saw him have that unscheduled stop on the last restart, he is 2 laps down, as well as Sheridan Wade. And then 1 lap down of the cars of William Swenson, Nicholas Winook, Najee Camargo, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Chris Stouffer, DL Lemon, and Brandon Gates.
J.W. Miller is someone I've definitely got my eye on here on this restart. I noticed back in the pack he wasn't that comfortable being put 3 wide. He didn't seem that solid in the middle, but he kept making up ground, which really caught my eye. I'm wondering if he can kind of keep moving forward here and if it might kind of better suit him to lead the field.
Jeff Heisong's been up inside of the top 5 pretty much all day long. He's been out in front for a good portion of this race as well, and he's going to get us back underway. You gotta wonder if maybe he might be one of the favorites.
Wow!
In this
Look at
one.
Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Man shot up the middle like a rocket.
And remember, we've got drivers that are a race within the race going on here. Not only drivers up at the front trying to lead here at Michigan, but drivers, several of them that I listed there, about 7 or 8 of them, that are a lap down, trying to be the first car 1 lap down in case a yellow comes out and get that free pass.
Car around Charles Teed. Oh my goodness.
Now we've got a car upside down further back there on the right side of the
my.
screen. I believe that might have been 59 of Najee Camargo.
Shreddy and Wade went through a ride. Oh my
Nicholas
goodness.
Winook was also in that. At least 4 cars collected up here in the 4th caution of the day. And I believe
Shreddy and
2
Wade
of them,
and Charles
Wade,
Teed. Oh my
actually
goodness.
3 of them, Camargo, Winook, and Wade, had already used their faster pair.
Aye.
Let's go back
Those
and look.
cars. My goodness, those cars. They took off.
Teed was the only car involved in this on the lead lap. And this was going into turn 3.
Just a little bit of a tap. Takes him
Wow.
out and just look at how those cars just.
Oh,
Oh
gosh.
that onboard is going to be entertaining.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
That was the 54 of Wade. The car on the right side of the screen that we were trying to identify, that was Nicholas Winook in the 33.
And it's just, that is so violent. I mean, even if, assuming the car didn't break immediately upon just hitting the wall, those flips are, that's going to do it in. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's, you see him flipping like a Frisbee. Oh my.
It's so weird, right? Because we know these cars are going upwards of 200, 240 miles per hour, but it almost looks like they gain another 50 miles per hour of speed when they go into that kind of aerial death roll.
I mean, that momentum's got to go somewhere.
Well,
The death.
does our did our onboard survive is the question. Let's see if we have our camera with Sheridan Wade or not. Looks like maybe it survived.
Oh my.
Wow. And you want to know the funny part about it? I think he was still driving it.
Oh, good.
Wheel was still
Oh,
full tilted left. I mean, either that or he was just frozen in fear. I don't know which it was. Now, we
oh,
didn't see Nicholas Winook, how he got collected up in this. Let's focus on the 33 as he enters into the vicinity here and see how he gets collected. Oh!
oh. That's the so he had a little bit less of an climactic role, but easily just as destructive. I mean, obviously all four wheels are destroyed in that car. I mean, he's gonna have to tow back, and I think he may have already used a fast repair at that last accident.
Yep, he did. So did Sheridan Wade and Najee Camargo. Were all collected up in that. The only one that was in that wreck that had a fast repair still to burn was Charles Teed.
So let's kind of get a lay of the land here. I mean, right now it looks like we've got about 11 cars in the lead lap. Gonzalez Nunez got the lucky dog out of that. He avoided all the calamity, which was great. That puts our current lap down, guys, as really Brandon Gates, William Swenson, could be wrong with that. Chris Stouffer, I mean, he is coming back, and just seeing the kind of the recovery that Luis Gonzalez Nunez had, I honestly believe that that is possible for him. DL Lennon, we really haven't talked about him a lot in this race, but he's just been really keeping the nose clean, just trying to keep going. And would you believe it or not, Charles Teed.
He did have to call the tow to be able to get back to pit road to get his fast repair, but to your point, only lost a single lap, so may be able to get back into this thing as less than 40 laps to go. I believe, yes, Luis Gonzalez Nunez got the free pass under that last caution, so he'll go back to work and trying to work his way back up to the front of the field from the 11th restarting position. But it's Jeff Heisong back in control and getting us back underway here at MIS.
And just looking here, just seeing a lot of these guys just kind of risk it. And I'm noticing that middle line seems to really be where you gang on restarts, but it's extremely risky. Chris Stouffer looks like he took the advantage, ended up jumping. Looks like Brandon Gates had a terrible restart there.
I did a quick count here. Only 9 drivers left running still have their fast repair available. That's 9 drivers out of 21 drivers that are still left in this race.
Oh my goodness. And just look at these guys be right back at 2 wide, almost pushing 3. And I'm just noticing a lot of these guys just really I can tell some cautions being thrown to the wind, but it's also, hey, I want to lead. I want to be in front. So I'm really wondering what our fuel range is. If we can actually make it to the end on this, I have some doubts, but it always comes into a question of, like, how far can we go?
Yeah, we've yet to see a full fuel run, but we did have that 30-lap run at the beginning of the race, and a couple of drivers elect to stay out when the caution came out at around the lap 30 and then run out of fuel a couple of laps later. So I think pretty safe to say, with 36 laps still on the board, nobody in the field would be able to make it the rest of the way.
And the big thing I'm really noticing is a lot of these guys at the back of the field, I can tell they definitely have a lot of speed and a lot of grip that they kind of can take somewhere, but they run into kind of the big issue that everyone runs into, which is, where do we go? Since I want to take the bottom lane, I have the most momentum, I have the most grip on the bottom, but someone else is on the bottom. Where do I take that momentum? Do I go up high? Do I risk it? Do I risk falling back? That's pretty much the epitome of super speedway racing, where you're just trying to play chess.
I love how we sold the idea. Whoa! Hobson got down the apron there and got really loose as a result, but I love how we tried to sell the idea at the beginning of the race that Michigan is so spacious, and now we're talking near the end of the race of, where do I go?
I mean, if you think this is a little bit cramped. I mean, we have Daytona on the schedule.
Oh, gosh.
And we're really going to be on a space there where I think we have big risks to effectively not run out of space, but I think space will come at a premium.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to have a lot of everybody wanting the same piece of real estate, which I think we could also run into next week at New Hampshire. Going to be at the Magic Mile. Going to be some of the drivers that will be happy to leave the high-speed action of Michigan and go to a place where it's a little bit more technical, if you will. The braking zones, we've seen a little bit of multi-groove racing at that track. There was a little contact, I think, right there.
The big thing
that was Christopher muscling literally his way to the front. Now remember, he was a lap down, so right now he would be on the tail end of the lead lap should a caution come out, and that would put Charles Teed in the free pass position.
I mean, if you really want to make sure you get your lap back, this is the way to do it. Go out there, go lead, and hey, you can go pit with the lead lap cars. Look at, wow, my goodness. Charles Teed said, no, I can go get it too.
Again, that is another of our lap down cars getting his lap back the hard way. The third car in line right now is actually your race leader. Then now, not even that. Look at that, Craig Forsyth getting the draft off of the lap, well, the tail end of the lead lap car. Now Christopher going to use that to swing around the outside and take the race lead down the back straightaway from Jeff Heisong.
And the biggest thing is currently Brandon Gates to get the free pass, but he's almost past the leader.
Oh my gosh, that would then put William Swinson in the lucky dog position. Wow.
Oh my goodness.
It's a matter of trying to figure out who's on the lead lap and who is not. Now, as of right now, the 27, the 22, the 18, the 51, those are the drivers in this big group right now that are the lead lap cars battling for spots on the podium. Currently, now J.W. Miller, the race leader, getting around the 27 of Forsyth.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Well, that's an apron. Whoa.
I could just see him get way loose there. And now, as you see J.W. Miller pass both Teed and Gates, I mean, the big question comes on of, okay, well, right now the fight's on for lucky dog spot. But obviously you don't want to be the reason of the caution.
If you're the race leaders, this is kind of a catch-22, right? I would think that, for one thing, you'd be happy that you've got a driver in front of you because you're not the lead car, you're not consuming the most fuel. But at the same time, you know that these guys are going to be racing tooth and nail to be the first car one lap down, and I don't know if you necessarily, as the leader, want to be in the same zip code.
Well, it's the fact of, you know, a race is going on, and unfortunately you're not in it, but the fact of you're having to deal with it, and you expect being the leader that you wouldn't have to deal with this, but I mean, look at that. Jim Herrick ended up just slicing his way through, and Gates is in the fence.
Yes, he is. Dropping back is the 76. Out off the fence quickly, though. Might be able to pull Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Might be able to catch the slipstream and still get up here with this pack.
But that's what you don't want as a lead, or as a leader, where you saw J.W. Miller on the bottom there. He was fast, he was fighting, he was doing the actual thing that the lead car should be doing. But you have someone who is behind you, gets that run, drives by you, and unfortunately you can't do anything because you've got a lap car in front of you. And it's not saying anything wrong with a lap car. I mean, he is entitled to race as he is doing. It's just, that's what you hate as a leader. You hate seeing I'm stuck behind him. Okay, who's coming next?
Let's also point out here as well, people might be wondering, well, why are they racing the leaders so hard to get on the tail end of the lead lap? Remember, if a caution comes out and you're ahead of the leader, that means you get to line up the last car of the lead lap cars with the lap machines behind you. If you have to rely on the lucky dog, you're starting at the very tail end of the field behind both the lead lap and lap down cars. So there actually is a net gain in track position if you manage to be scored on the tail end of the lead lap when the caution flies.
Not to mention, if you do get around the track fast enough, you can pit with the leaders, and that could really help you jump cycle some of these guys.
Looking right now for
look at Charles Teed.
Most drivers right now, they're turning their like about 19th lap of this run. Got a couple of drivers that elected to pit around the 1 to go mark under the last caution periods. They're only about 15, 16 laps into their run, and then two drivers that really stand out to me. Jeff Heisong in the 18, AJ Hobson in the 63. They are nearing 30 laps on this run, and that's about the number that we kind of were looking at, 30 to 35 laps that you can maybe make on a tank of fuel. So those two may not be too far away from potentially their final pit stop of the day, and we've yet to see drivers make green flag pit stops. We saw them practicing it, but we've yet to see those pit stops take place here in race conditions.
I'm just looking here. Jim Brooks has had one of the most eventful laps trying to get up here to the front of the pack when he started P21, currently running P4, believe it or not, here he is in line, is running P4. That is just insane that he drove up all the way from the back of the pack, and he's in the lead fight. But obviously, you have to deal with a little bit of lap traffic.
Jim Brooks has seen pretty good at top line as well to ride on board with him. Has really migrated down towards that white line. The only issue that I kind of have with that strategy is the two big wrecks that we've seen so far today has swept up drivers in that outside line with absolutely no opportunity to react. So do you want to put yourself potentially on the hot seat up there on the top line, or would you rather run down the bottom knowing that if there's a wreck ahead of you, they're more than likely going to sweep up out of the lane that you're running in?
Realistically, I'd love to hang the bottom, but right now hanging the bottom is a risk in itself. I'm noticing what the lap cars are doing of both Teed and my apologies, Stouffer, is that whenever we get up front, they try to maintain both the.
Wow,
they're getting dicey. They're trying to maintain
93 of Brad Yelkman, I think, right there, that just got one of his laps back from 2 now to -1 leading this group.
And watch them how they race here. One will take the bottom line and that'll hold up the bottom line, and one will take the top, where it doesn't, or that middle line, and it doesn't allow any runs to be generated. So right now, these guys are pretty much net gain. If any caution comes out, they're going to end up gaining big because no one can pass them. But really, when this breaks down is when someone gets a run of it. Bottom line isn't being protected, or there's just enough of a gap in the middle for someone to stick their nose in, and that's where the issues start to begin, where, hey, you start falling back to the field, but it also gets really risky.
Fuel windows open, and I saw a little bit of smoke lingering off of turn 4, locking up the rear tires to make pit road speed. The 76 of Brandon Gates was on pit lane about a lap ago, so we'll see if other drivers will be making any indication towards pit road as we're at less than 20 laps to go. Little house cleaning here. Looks like a couple more drivers will not reach the conclusion of tonight's event. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Najee Camargo, and Eric Peterson back in the garage area here.
And it's a shame for Luis Gonzalez Nunez, but like I said, that's just the risk that kind of comes with this racing. And it's so weird to see the top 3 guys going 3 wide, and then you look at it and realize that none of them are actually actually fighting for the lead.
They're battling right now for the 10th position, and then the 93 there is currently in 15th, trying to get one of his 2 laps back currently. Now it's a battle for the lead. Jim Brooks in that green number 51 alongside of Jeff Heisong.
And this is really what you want, is that second car. You're trying to get just a little bit of air. Just try to get up to the front. And I'm noticing, oh man, Wilker does not look good. He does not look stable on that bottom line.
We ended up talking about this a lot. This racing series is running the DW12s, especially at tracks like this in Auto Club. The longer you go, the lighter the fuel load gets and the looser that back end gets, especially on corner exit. Does the same thing apply here for the IRO1s?
Here, I think we have enough downforce, enough ground effect where it doesn't really make the cars unstable. But I can definitely tell it's a little bit more tending on the plow side than the kind of looseness.
Looking ahead at that battle, 93 and the 5 on board with the race leader, who's going to pull right up to the back bumper there of the 93.
Now,
Heisong got the lead back from Jim Brooks currently.
Here's my question. Right now, you can obviously, at least how I see it, is that the lead lap cars are not really pushing yet. They're not pushing to try and get past these guys. But you know that in the back of their line, they have that internal clock. And everyone has it, but it's ticking down, telling you when it's go time. And I think right now, a lot of these clocks are going to start hitting midnight. It's really going to be go time. Now, the big question is, do you want to try and get in front of Heisong later in the race, hoping, do you want to try and get past some of these lap cars later in the race, hoping that when it's finally go time, those lap cars are going to act as almost blockers for you? Or do you want to keep trying to keep them in front of you as a deterrent for guys behind you who may get a run?
I saw Joseph Morales come off pit road. Honestly,
it's a tough decision because
it is a tough decision.
And it looks like Hysong is coming down this time. He has screamed it out.
And I think we'll probably see AJ Hobson on pit road this lap as well. Both Hysong and Hobson hadn't pitted for the last 2 cautions, so it'll be 38 laps that they have gone on this stint. Sprinkle in a couple of caution laps there with the opportunity to save some fuel. Let's see if they can get these things woed down here.
And he took it really conservatively on pit road. No, he didn't speed. He is all good. And the big thing is, okay, you've tried to maximize your entry to the best of your ability, but you really need to maximize that exit. That's what's going to keep you in the race. I think AJ Hobson's going to be our next one to kind of look to come down. Oh, man, I saw Jim Brooks' tire fly off his car there for just a second.
Someone's up there against the wall. Is that Forsyth?
Yeah, it looks like he was trying to get down the pit road. Oh, it looks like Forsyth had a lot better of entry on the pit road, but had to stop because of AJ Hobson. That may cost him just a little bit.
Hobson, Forsyth making their final stops of the day. That turns the race lead over to Eric Schaus. He just swung around the outside of Jim Brooks to go to the point.
And now Schaus
is led today. He was up there inside the top 3 early, but I don't think he's led today. Now he is.
Schaus is kind of in a good spot here where he has some drafting help. He can kind of keep going further. And to my knowledge, Charles Teed is a teammate where they can kind of coordinate their strategy here a little bit to make sure they come in with a friend. I noticed that it looks like Craig Forsyth left pit road a lot quicker than AJ Hobson, so I'm not exactly sure if he held for a penalty or he just was not expecting.
AJ Hobson has left pit road, but the pit stop differential between Craig Forsyth and AJ Hobson is about 3 seconds. Actually, it might have been fuel only for Craig Forsyth. They're showing only 3.3 seconds in his pit box compared to the 6.8 of AJ Hobson.
And I'm just looking at it. Oh, looks like Will Roberts may have just got it a little bit hot on pit road, but I don't think he sped. Almost hit the commitment cone, though.
J.W. Miller, our pole sitter, in as well. We saw Jim Brooks was on pit lane the lap before, along with William Swenson. We're now waiting for 4 drivers up inside of our top 6 to hit pit lane. Leader Eric Schaus, second place Elmer Joseph, and then Charles Teed and Chris Stouffer, who are currently on the tail end of the lead lap after we ended up having the 18 and the 51 hit pit road.
And here's where we're starting to get a little bit sketchier because I know those 3 guys up front are going to stay out as long as possible because they're trying to maximize their potential to stay on the lead lap. But I think that's coming to an end. Looks like Charles Teed will be coming down this time. I would not be surprised to see Eric Schaus follow him down.
Yeah, he's getting passed right and left here. Might be trying to save just the least little bit. Interesting. We had Craig Forsyth come to pit lane and take fuel only. Well, Elmer Joseph, or make that correction, J.W. Miller came down the lap after, took on fuel only. So drivers obviously keeping aware of what their competition is doing and replicating it, trying to see if it will gain them track position.
Interesting. Schaus did not come down. That's an interesting move there.
He has gone 38 laps on this stint. He would have to be a miracle worker to save 6 laps of fuel.
It's not impossible, but it's very improbable. I wonder if he's planning to make it
as well.
He might be trying to make it as far as possible because every time he's been out and he's stayed in draft, I wonder if he's trying to stay in draft as long as possible, only trying to put a splash into it and hoping that since he's been in draft so long and hasn't had to go kind of fight to stay in it, he can technically leapfrog some of these guys, but it would be really, really tough.
Well, the question is, how long has he been saving? Did he start saving at the beginning of this run? He might be pitting this time, and indeed he is. Gonna have to pit with 5 laps to go. We'll see if Elmer Joseph comes in this time. Nope, 13's going to stay out another lap.
I think right now Eric Schaus' strategy was not to stay out the entire time. I think he's just trying to put as little fuel in the car as possible without losing as any time. Because he's been tucked up to these now lead lap cars the entire time. So I think he was really just trying to keep hold of them and try to gain as much time as possible where others may have lost. The big question is, will it kind of even out? I'm not exactly sure. I don't think this one will exactly even out.
Hot pit there for Elmer Joseph, but I think he got it woed down. He nearly hit the commitment cone. And this should be the driver that things cycle out to. Pole sitter J.W. Miller trying to go coast to coast. I think if we ended up taking a look at a graph of where he's been running all day, it would kind of look a bit like a mountain peak. He's been all through the field, the front, the back, and now back up to the front again, but up front when it matters. 3 laps to go, and he's got about almost 2 seconds back to Craig Forsyth in second place.
The big question is, will they be able to work together to try and catch him? Because obviously, as a pack, they're faster. He's going a max of about, let me see here. He's going about a max of 244 on the straights, while Craig Forsyth and others are getting about 250. So in theory, it should be able to catch him, but obviously, if you're having to lift off at certain points to make sure guys are not going to run each other over, that's going to slow you down a lot, and that's what I think may kind of keep J.W. Miller in the best running for this, where I don't think they can get organized quick enough to go catch him.
Yeah, they were just 3 wide right there for second place. Eric Schaus, Craig Forsyth, Joseph Morales right now, second, third, fourth in this group. They've got a lap car in with them as well. You may feel that it's too little too late to catch up to J.W. Miller and trying to figure out who's going to get those final spots on the podium as the white flag in the air. 1 lap to go for J.W. Miller in the 22.
Yeah, I really think J.W. Miller has this in the bag as long as he doesn't mess up. But right now, the battle's on for third. Joseph Morales pulled a really wicked move on Craig Forsyth. I think he may hold it.
Off of 4, coast to coast in the season opener. J.W.
Forsyth
Miller,
got
a
it.
winner at Michigan, and Forsyth by 54 1,000ths, scoring is saying. Gonna get that final spot on the podium behind Eric Schaus.
Oh, yeah. But just thinking, like, looking back at that race, the fact the lap cars are almost able to gang up on the lead lap cars, that was impressive.
Made things confusing, I'm not gonna lie. I knew High Song was at the front, I knew Jim Brooks was at the front, and then it was a who's who of, are they on the lead lap or are they a lap down? I don't know.
Man, our entire podium consists of 2s.
2s and 7s.
Yeah, good numbers. But as heartbreaking as it is to see Joseph Morales come up short in fourth, I don't think enough can be said about the growth from what I saw last season to what I saw in this one race.
And you look too at some of these drivers along with Morales. How about Elmer Joseph there in 6th? Gary Corley, who had early issues, 9th. Will Roberts in 10th. And these were drivers that were able to stay out of trouble. We had those 2 really big wrecks. A lot of the big names, the front runners, having to rely on faster pairs, losing out on track position, keeping their noses clean. A lot of drivers going to be leaving Michigan here in pretty good point situations in preparation for New Hampshire. And doesn't look like J.W. Miller is even going to do some burnouts. He's heading to that victory lane right here in the infield grass.
I think he's out of gas.
Yeah, you know.
I think he's all out.
Yeah,
he timed it perfectly.
Took a splash when he came to pit road, so yeah, might not have enough to be able to do a burnout. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at the front end design of that Castro car. Is that a swan? Is that that looks like a goose?
I think it's an eagle.
It was an eagle. Oh, okay.
I'm willing to bet. Did you really think it was a goose?
I mean, you like the goose, so I thought maybe it was a goose.
No, it's an eagle.
Okay.
I know my feathered friends.
Let's take a look here at your top 5 finishers, and we will be interviewing in just a moment your podium finishers from this evening's event. Wow, that was definitely a season opener, a debut race here for the FART NDCar series. And I don't want to say a surprise winner because we know he had the speed, but J.W. Miller, he was out in front at the start of this race, but then kind of faded back, and then he just kind of slowly crept his way back up to the front again. So a very sneaky victory here for driver 22, but great momentum in preparation for next week.
But I'm just looking at some of this, and oh my goodness. And just looking at the spread of our top 10, I mean, you've got kind of a combination of a lot of kind of familiar names, but just names that we have not heard of before. I mean, again, J.W. Miller, we've got Eric Schaus, Craig Forsyth, Joseph Morales, Jeff Heisong to kind of fill out the top five. A lot of guys that we're familiar with. Elmer Joseph, all the way back from 17th, came all the way up to 6th. We really hadn't talked about him today, and he's one of the guys who just kind of snuck through, made sure his nose stayed clear, and got himself a really good finish. AJ Hobson bounces back to 7th. Jim Brooks in 8th, Garrett Corley 9th, and Will Roberts kind of rounds off our top 10.
And it's interesting too because we try and get everybody some recognition on here, some TV time, but sometimes when we don't end up calling out a driver's name, that's sometimes a good thing too because it means that they haven't been involved in the carnage and the mayhem. And to your point, that's why I think we have a number of drivers that we didn't really talk about. We see them up here with some really good finishes here this evening. We're looking to see if we can get a hold of any of our podium finishers. I thought for a moment we had Craig Forsyth available and Eric Schaus, but I don't see either of them any longer. So I guess we'll leapfrog and go to victory lane. What do you say? We dial up J.W. Miller.
Let me just take one last check to make sure I don't see anything. Yeah, I suppose so.
All right, let's see if we can get a hold of driver 22. Hey, J.W. Miller, Matt Rod, Seth Cole up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you.
Man, you drove a heck of a race here today. We know that car had a lot of speed in it. You had it sitting on the pole position for tonight's season opener, but we were just commenting on the fact that you started up front but then kind of faded back and then charged back up to the front at the end of this race. Was that the strategy, or did you kind of have to gain track position back during the course of this race?
Yeah, we weren't quite sure about the strategy, whether or not these guys were going to be able to run a uh, full green flag run or not. Just kind of wanted to stick with the mid pack there and just kind of ride, save some fuel. We would have been able to make it on a two stopper if it had gone green, and then obviously there at the end with the last caution, we were just a couple laps short, so had to make a short pit and really just had an outstanding pit stop and outlap and was able to gap the field enough where I could save a little bit on that last lap and just made it to the end.
So I'm not as much focused on the last couple laps as I have most of the race. I mean, obviously we've had some really huge wrecks, and you've all pretty much managed to miss almost all of them. How in the world did you pull that off?
Yeah, no, our strategy as far as missing the wrecks was kind of staying low. This car isn't too bad on the apron, so if we needed it, we could have gone down. I try to, especially on super speedways, stay kind of in that low lane because you get a lot more room to move up or down versus being on the top side. So, yeah, that was kind of the deal there. Just hang it as low as possible, save as much fuel as possible, and yeah, it worked out for us pretty well.
Talk about a lot more room here at Michigan. Next week, we're going to the Magic Mile at Loudon, New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Not quite as much room for you guys to be able to utilize. So, how important was it for you here today to get this victory, get those maximum points in preparation for next week?
Oh, it was definitely huge. We knew that we had the pace for qualifying from the practice race that we did earlier, so I felt really confident going in that we would have a chance at the pole. Got that, and just kind of feel like we lucked out on the strategy and everything. And yeah, maximum points feels good. But Loudon is also another track that I really like, and I can't wait to see how this car races at that track.
Well, we got to see both sides of Michigan today. The aggressive double, three, even four wide racing out on the racetrack. The aggressive pit strategy there in the closing stages here in this one. JW, congratulations on a job well done and the victory to open up the season here. We'll let you get back to celebrating, but before we do, the floor is yours to thank some sponsors and do some shout-outs.
Yeah, obviously thanks to 4D Racewear for sponsoring this series. That's awesome. Great to get everybody on board for this one. I think this is going to be a fantastic series. Thank you guys for broadcasting. Obviously, FRN, great broadcasting team all around. Can't wait to watch the broadcast back. Thanks to Martin Sports and Team Watson Racing for backing me up for everything that I do. And we're going to go have a party back at the garage tonight.
Coast to coast here tonight in the season opener at Michigan for J.W. Miller. Congratulations on the victory and best of luck next week.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like our second and third place drivers have climbed from their machines, so let's see if we can dial up our runner-up finisher here tonight, Eric Schaus. Hey, Eric, Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey guys, how are you?
I'll tell you what, we got treated up here in the booth to a really exciting race, but I can only imagine what the nerves were like for you guys down there. We saw aggressive racing from start to finish. It also came down, it looked like, to fuel strategy with that final pit stop. You were the driver that elected to go the furthest. What was going through your mind there in that strategy call?
I kind of figured that, extend it as long as I can in case there is a caution. These cars are crazy difficult to get off a pit road safely, especially if people aren't taking tires. So I thought maybe there's a chance something's going to happen there. And then I just kind of figured the overcut in general would be a little bit quicker as long as I could stay in a pack, just in case people were coming out and not catching a draft. I might get a little bit better run. Overall, pretty good.
So I asked the same question to Miller. I'm going to ask the same question to you. How in the world did you make it through some of those wrecks? Because, my goodness.
Well, I didn't make it through the first one, the big one that took out like half the field. That one grabbed me too, but I was able to race for my lap back, or I got lucky dog, I believe. Yeah, I didn't know what was safe. I didn't know where I wanted to be. If I wanted to be at the front of the pack, the back of the pack, it didn't seem to make a difference because I was near the back when I got caught up in the first big one. The second one, I got lucky staying low, and it went around the outside of me. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't know what was safe. I just got lucky on the one that mattered.
Now, we ended up seeing you start back in the 11th position and having to cut your way through the field, but you did it rather quickly. I think it was 5 laps, and we saw you up inside of the podium. We were talking about how these cars seem to be able to really generate runs when they're in the draft, and yes, it's very spacious here at Michigan, but everybody seems to be able to want to pick any one of the 5 lanes. So how difficult was it being able, especially on a long run, to figure out where your car worked the best and to be able to utilize that area without somebody else taking your piece of real estate?
Overall, the car felt like it ran pretty good everywhere. Like you said, the runs were absolutely massive. So it was really just, biding your time until you were ready to go. I wanted to lead a lap early up front. Had a poor qualifying, bumping the wall on my out lap. So I wanted to just get up front, lead a lap, and then fall back to the back. But yeah, getting runs was not all that difficult. You could either shoot it up the middle, shoot it on the outside, and yeah, getting up to the front wasn't too bad.
Well, playing the strategy gained you that good track position in the closing stages. You hang on for second place. Good points day in preparation for next week's race at New Hampshire. So congratulations on that. Before we let you go, we're going to hand the mic over to you. Let you thank some sponsors and do some shout-outs.
Yeah, thanks. It was a good start to the season, so I'm happy with that. Thanks to you guys at FRN. Appreciate your broadcast. Thanks to Dark Horse for putting on this league. It's fun to finally race this car. And thanks for the sponsors out there. I believe 4D Racewear is sponsoring this year, so thanks to them.
Eric Schaus, your runner-up finisher here tonight at Michigan International Speedway. Congratulations once again on a great performance, and best of luck next week at the Magic Mile.
Thank you.
And let's complete the podium interviews here with tonight's third place finisher, Craig Forsyth. Craig, Matt, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got a copy?
I got you guys. How you doing?
Well, man, I'm going to ask you the first thing here that we were kind of wondering in the closing stages. We saw you guys double wide, 3 wide for second place. Was there any chance, if you guys had gotten organized up, that you'd been able to reel in that 22 and make it a 3 or 4-man fight for this race victory, or was it too little too late?
I think we needed 2 or 3 more laps of racing, honestly. I mean, we were catching them, but there just wasn't enough time. And, I mean, the cars are already, hitting their max speeds. So, no, that was good on JW for making having just a blazing pit stop. That's for sure.
I'm just so bewildered where you started out the race not looking like the fastest car, or at least to my eyesight, which is rather bad. Uh, but you managed to pull it back in almost the same way that you kind of always do in an odd way. Uh, on that final pit stop, I noticed that you took only gas, no tires, no nothing. Just what was kind of call there? Does tires really matter on these?
Well, I mean, for the number of laps that were left, it was like basically I knew it'd be like a 2.5 second stop versus a 6+ second stop. So to me, it was a no brainer to do that. I was hoping that I would be farther ahead, but I guess a few other guys had the same idea. But no, I mean, it's for me, it was learning as I go. I haven't practiced a lot in this car, so I hadn't really experienced how the drafting works with how tightly these cars pack. So it required, I think if you watch the beginning of the race, I mean, I was lifting earlier than other people were and lifting too much. And then as the race was progressing, I was getting more and more comfortable with how little I could lift while maintaining speed in the level of draft that I was. I mean, I think I only led one lap. I was just trying to keep the car always in the draft constantly to try and save fuel and see if that would help, but we kept having cautions, so in the end didn't really help.
So, Craig, obviously, we documented the fact that you're a former champion in the Dark Horse Racing Series when you guys ran the DW12 cars. Now we're in the IR01s. We're going to be at different speedways here this season, shorter speedways. We've got Daytona coming up here on the schedule, some more 1.5 miles, some of them ovals, some of them D-shapes. Now, obviously, only one race under your belt here this season, but with this one race, what's the outlook in preparation to try and win a championship with these cars? Do you think it's going to be around the same level of difficulty, maybe a little tougher, maybe a little easier?
It's going to be these cars generate so much draft that it's going to be really hard to break away unless we get some long green flag runs. It's going to be really hard in any of the bigger ovals to break away at all. So, I mean, those are usually the tracks that I do really good at, and usually the ones that I can rely on my pit stopping getting me ahead of guys. So those are, knowing that that's going to be even more difficult in this car, this is going to be a really difficult, really competitive season.
Well, we are looking forward to it, no doubt. Great showcase here tonight in the season opener. Congratulations on finishing on the podium tonight in that third position. Before we let you go, though, the floor is yours for thank you, sponsors, and shoutouts.
Oh, first off, got to thank Jim over at 4D Racewear. Wasn't able to make the race tonight, but Chris as well, my teammate. I think he was right up at the front, and unfortunately he got hip checked into the wall or neck coated or something, because all of a sudden it went from 3 green cars in front of me to only 2. So that was unfortunate. And then the boys over at my esports team, the 510 esports guys. And you guys over at FRN, good on Charles Teed for getting the Dark Horse back up and running, getting us broadcast again. And it's nice to be back on. And this is a crazy car.
A crazy car, and we're looking forward to seeing what it does next week at the Magic Mile. Congratulations on a job well done. Some good points heading into that race, Craig.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe.
And that is going to bring our coverage tonight here to a close. It got to points in this race, Matt, where you kind of just wanted to stay silent and watch and observe what was going on, because these drivers, they were aggressive really from start to finish. I said at the beginning that maybe some drivers were going to utilize this race, since everybody started with a clean slate, as a testing period. See what these cars could do. See how the draft was utilized in preparation for some of these other 1.5 mile, 2-mile racetracks that we've got coming up. Is that what we saw here tonight, do you think?
I'd like to believe that's what we saw, but again, anything's really possible. I think tonight was really hey, let's test out and see what we can do. And I think as kind of the season goes on, people will get a lot more confident with the racing. I feel people getting emboldened, and I think that's when we're going to start running into issues. But I think that's a later problem.
So I want to just real quickly on something that Craig Forsyth said, touch on it just for a moment. He was talking about how the draft is so much more prevalent, the slipstream so much more prevalent with these cars. As I look at the next 2 tracks that we're going to, New Hampshire next week, and then in 3 weeks' time we're going to be in the desert at Phoenix. Shorter ovals. Does the draft come into play in those type of races, do you think? Those kind of technical racetracks?
I feel they would, but again, what I've been quickly proven is what I know about this car is wrong. So it's going to continue being a learning experience as we keep going through the season of what is actually possible with this car. And I think we'll get a better grasp on that next week.
Yeah, what we know about this car is that we know what we don't know.
Oddly enough,
But-
yes.
But we'll be learning right along with you folks here week after week. Next week, these drivers are going to be heading to New Hampshire Motor Speedway to continue on the first season of the FART NCcar series under the Dark Horse Racing Series banner. Hope that you guys will join us for that. That will be May the 7th. Green flag scheduled to fly at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on FRN. Matt, it's been a great one here tonight with this season opener. I appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Always a joy.
And again, we'll see you guys next Sunday night for the continuation here of the FART NCcar series on FRN, the Flat Out Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flat Out Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flat Out Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flat Out Racing Network would